I'm Rick Harp. This is your APTN News Brief for Thursday, May 2nd. We begin with day 3 of pre-trial proceedings in the Jeremy Skibicki case in Winnipeg. 3 days the defense has spent trying to get the judge to toss the jury. Charged with 4 counts of murder, Skibicki's alleged victims are all believed to be Indigenous. He's pled not guilty to all charges. With more, T.R. Wheatley.
Day 3 of pretrial proceedings saw the defense wrapping up their closing arguments, and one statement really stood out. The accused lawyers said they will be, quote, offering NCR defense, unquote, when the full trial gets underway on May 8th. NCR is short for not criminally responsible on account of mental disorder. Earlier this week, the defense had a pollster on the stand who they hired to conduct an online questionnaire this past winter. 905 Manitobans answered over 40 questions. That poll posed 3 defense strategies, including NCR, problematic DNA evidence, and self-defense. There were also separate questions dedicated to each alleged victim, asking whether or not the public knew the names of the women killed, Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and an unidentified woman the Indigenous community calls Buffalo Woman. The killings happened in the spring of 2022. Later in the week, another defense expert testified that jury members cannot avoid bias because of all the media coverage in the build-up to the long-awaited trial from 2022 until now. The witness referenced a 72-page document that lists 405 media stories and 129 other sources about the trial, including social media, Winnipeg police updates, and House of Commons debates. The defense said some of the information out there can't be unheard, including news about searching a landfill where it's alleged 3 of the women's remains are. It even became a Manitoba election issue, as well as the fact that most coverage alleged Jeremy Skibicki was a serial killer and associated this case with the broader systemic problem of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The defense said that's why this case should be heard by a judge alone, especially with a defense approach of NCR. The Crown referenced 2 high-profile jury trials that had extensive media coverage where the victims were also Indigenous, including the Robert Pickton trial in British Columbia. The other was here in Manitoba, the Cormier trial where he was acquitted in the murder of Tina Fontaine, despite all the extensive coverage that even included phrases like Tina's death galvanized the Indigenous community. King's Bench Chief Justice Ken Joyle is presiding over this trial. He also presided over the Cormier trial. Judge Joyle will make his decision on Friday as to whether this will stay a jury trial or move to a standalone judge trial. As for the NCR defense, it is worth mentioning that during jury selection last week, potential jurors were also asked about their opinion on not criminally responsible on account of mental disorder. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A police search of the Saskatoon landfill has begun, looking for signs that could help determine the whereabouts of young Métis woman McKenzie Trottier, who first went missing back in 2020. With more on what led police to explore a specific section of the landfill, Rachel May.
McKenzie, we love you, and we miss you deeply.
McKenzie Trottier was 22 when she was last seen in Saskatoon on December 21st, 2020. After 3.5 years, the search has now moved to the city landfill. Saskatoon's garbage trucks are equipped with GPS tracking, and the landfill is divided by neighborhoods. This has allowed police to pinpoint a 930 square meter search area. McKenzie's father, Paul Trottier, said today is a difficult but important part of the journey.
The enormous amount of work that's going on behind us is staggering. I know that for my family, this is the last place anybody wants to be. So emotionally, it's difficult.
Over the next 33 days, Saskatoon City Police, Calgary Police Services, and specially trained dogs will be searching for evidence regarding McKenzie's case. Saskatoon Police Major Crime Staff Sergeant Corey Lenius said working with the RCMP and Calgary Police has given them access to tools otherwise unavailable to them.
So the canine units from Calgary and the RCMP, they're specifically trained dogs, purpose dogs. There's only a handful in the country, and they were available for us to use during this period.
When asked what the dogs were trained in, Lenius said they are human recovery cadaver dogs. At this time, the search is still considered a missing person investigation. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
The man convicted of killing a Casco woman from Ross River, Yukon, has been sentenced. White House reporter Sarah Connors was at the hearing.
The Supreme Court of Yukon has sentenced Philip Atkinson with a 9.5-year sentence in the 2019 death of Casca woman Mary Ann Oley. 59-year-old Oley was last seen the evening of July 31st, 2019 at Atkinson's home. Her lifeless body was discovered there the next day, where she was pronounced dead. While her death was originally not considered suspicious, an autopsy later showed her body had signs of injury, including anorectal trauma that caused internal bleeding. 68-year-old Atkinson, who was also Casca, was originally charged with first-degree murder a year after Oley's death. He pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter as part of a plea bargain. The Crown and defense chose a joint submission for sentencing, meaning they agreed on the sentence. The Crown said it had significant weaknesses in its case and that a joint submission would prevent a 5-week jury trial and save time and court resources. With time already served, Atkinson will be released from federal prison in just over 4 years. He's also subject to a DNA order and a lifetime firearms ban. A family member of Oley who was at the sentencing told reporters she didn't think justice was served and that Atkinson's sentence should be longer for the pain he's caused the community. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
The woman who accused former MP Romeo Saganas of sexual assault has filed a civil lawsuit. An allegation made a year ago by Carmen Roy. She says she now lives with psychological, emotional, and physical injuries. The long prominent First Nations leader represented a Quebec riding until 2019. He was arrested by Winnipeg police last June. Some 4 months later, Saganash's case was diverted to the Manitoba Restorative Justice Centre, something Roy says she never wanted to happen. Saganash's next court appearance, said to be largely administrative, is set for May 17th. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has once again taken aim at the decriminalization of hard drugs. On Tuesday, Poilievre expressed concern in a House of Commons debate about a City of Toronto request to exempt some of those drugs from federal laws, more specifically to decriminalize the possession of small amounts. But Poilievre claims a similar exemption in BC led to chaos in places like hospitals, parks, and public transportation. And in a letter to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Poilievre called on the PM to reverse the city's request and reverse his support for legalizing crack, cocaine, heroin, meth, and other hard drugs.
We've already seen that 2,500 people die as a result of this policy happening in BC. And yesterday I was trying to get the Prime Minister to commit that he wouldn't import this wacko idea to Toronto, which is already reeling from his catch and release criminal justice system in car thefts, extortions, carjackings, and deadly violent crime. And he wouldn't do it.
And finally, Peguis First Nation in Manitoba has declared a state of emergency in hopes of addressing a health crisis they say is driven by repeated spring flooding. The news comes a week after the community launched a $1 billion lawsuit against the province of Manitoba and the feds for damages. Sierra Bettens reports.
On the land that Chief Peguis once protected, we are compelled to declare a state of emergency in Peguis First Nation. This declaration is driven by a severe crisis that affects not just our lands and homes, but the very spirit and mental well-being of our people.
Located 200 kilometers north of Winnipeg, Peguis is the largest First Nation in Manitoba, with a population of approximately 10,000 members. The $1 billion lawsuit seeks compensation from the federal and provincial governments for flood damages, repairs, and cleanup costs. The community was first displaced from the St. Peter's Reserve near Selkirk, Manitoba, in 1907, following an illegal land transfer. Today, around 549 members are still displaced from the flood of 2022. Chief Stan Bird says there are over 180 condemned houses in Peguis. However, some families, lacking options, live in them.
The scars left by these waters are not visible only on buildings alone, but are evident in the eyes and hearts of our people.
A press release from Peguis cites increased reports of self-harm, domestic violence, and substance abuse in the last year. Patricia Caribou, lead of the Peguis Wellness Team, wants more autonomy from Indigenous Services Canada to address these issues.
The answer is to allow Peguis to do what they see fit, how to help the families, how to help the individuals, how to help everybody. Peguis has their own answer for all mental health, physical health, the whole holistic healing of the community.
Mike Sutherland is the band's director of special projects. He says the flooding is driven by farming.
Riparian areas, swamps, and wetlands have been eliminated in the rural municipality south of us. Those things hold water, right? To prevent water from flowing, and they're there for a reason, but yet because of agriculture, they're all gone.
While the community is part of a federal and provincial working group, Sutherland says they're still forced to prioritize crisis intervention over long-term prevention.
How many times do we have to flood before they do anything? Like how many people have to die, overdose or suicide, or elders dying while they're away from home because they're lonely. I mean, this has been our homeland for over 100 years.
After decades of fighting for action, Sutherland says Peguis no longer wants studies, they want solutions. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Peguis First Nation.
And that's your APTN News Brief for Thursday, May 2nd. I'm Rick Harp.